Hello, and welcome back. In this one, we are reviewing, analyzing, and reacting to episode 9 and 10 of Season 2 of TSUKIMICHI Moonlit Fantasy. And yes, once again, I know I am a few days late, but we are getting back to our daily schedule. Slowly but surely. So let's jump in. Now, I did make a ton of notes for these two episodes, especially episode 9, because that exposition dump, well, I made a whole page worth of notes because, well, they dumped a lot of info, okay? I will try not to talk about it for an hour, but no promises, no promises. First, I want to quickly talk a bit about Luria and her sister and that whole background story we got, and the potential connection to Makoto's parents. So apparently, Luria and her sister are from a now demon-controlled country. I mean, okay, sure. We still know very little about the different countries in this isekai world, and how many there are, how they interact with each other, how many are under demon control, all these different things. I mean, as I mentioned before, I would really like a whole episode, even two, simply purely covering geopolitics and how the geography is in this world. But alas, Luria, sister from this country, and they ran away, and because of that they are ashamed because they're cowards, whatnot. And in connection with this, somehow, Luria, when she saw the picture of Makoto's parents, recognized them as, I guess they were some fairly known people back in her homeland. He was a politician, she was a priestess. A bit unclear how exactly the correlation is there, and how exactly things happened. It was fairly cryptic. And I do have questions regarding whether Luria will be able to, or how she will be able to, recognize the faces of these people. I mean, even if they were fairly known and fairly high-ranking, I feel like that is a bit odd that she would recognize them in a picture like that. But anyway, she did. So we get a slight bit of background to Makoto's parents. Very little, to be fair. But at least it's something, because I haven't really heard anything about his parents for a long time. And of course, Makoto ends up wanting to help Luria and her sister as well, by dealing with the organization that she ran into, and that Makoto is also investigating. Not really sure what they want to do with the storyline with Luria and her sister and this whole homeland thing, and the potential parent connection. I feel like, okay, they must have a plan to do something with that down the line, right? Because it would be really odd if they just made this connection and set this plot point up and then just let it fizzle out and not do anything more with it. So I am very curious to see how they continue with that, hopefully sometime down the line in Season 2. Now moving on to Rona and her very bodacious, interesting plotlines.
I want a diamond ring, I want some bracelets and everything. Daddy.
She is by far one of my favorite characters this season. I do quite like her. Her special investigation techniques and all. I do have a lot of questions, though, about Rona. So, she infiltrated this academy city, right? Her goal's not completely obvious. She clearly gave this medicine or whatnot to this brat guy student before, as we saw way earlier in the season, and how we also see him basically becoming an addict and struggling with the pill addiction in episode 10. So why did she give him those pills? Did she give other people the pills? What did the pills do? What was her goal with that? I don't know, but something. Hopefully we will get more info on that later. But also, what was she really doing there? I mean, she said to Makoto, claimed that she was there to deal with this organization that were doing experiments on demi-humans and whatnot. But why would she really care about that, right? I mean, even if she was just lying to Makoto, if she really wasn't, and she was partly there to deal with the organization, why would she be there for that? Why does the demon army care about some organization doing some weird studies on demi-humans? They're not allied with them, right? And they're not really especially moral, are they? So they're not there to try to do what's just and right? I don't know. I didn't really see the connection with that, but I assume there is one, somehow. We did hear Rona say, though, at the end tail of episode 9 that she accomplished her original goal already, which clearly was something else other than the organization thing. I assume it might have been the pill thing, or maybe something else. Maybe she was there to scout Makoto. Maybe she was there to see how powerful he may be, because she had that mock fight with him as a student. So not really sure what her end goal is yet, but I am very curious to find out more about her scheming. And yes, again, as I said, I do quite like her as a character. She is quite entertaining. Now at this point, yes, I have to go into the exposition dumps and Luto, the very pervy greater dragon that we found out about in episode 9. He or she or it, I mean, I guess I didn't really realize dragons can change genders like that so easily, but I guess all powerful monsters can? I don't know how that really works, but okay. Sounds like 2024 to me anyway. But anyway, the dragon, now a he, had this whole massive exposition dump, which was interesting, but also made me make way too many notes and think way too long about the implications of what he was saying. So let's start off here. So he knows that Makoto is looking for a way home, because he also had a master way back when, 1,000 years ago, that was also from the real world. But we learn that based on what his master all the way back then taught him, he would have been, I don't know, from the 1980s or 90s or something, in the human world, or the real world. So then, of course, the whole question of time dilation, time travel, and how all these things interact come into question. And I didn't hear any concrete example or explanation of how this works, just that somehow time goes at different rates between these two worlds, and assumingly maybe something like 40-50 years is the equivalent of like 1,000 years in this world. I do wonder how that mechanic might be used later, if at all, but I am somewhat intrigued to learn more. What was even more interesting though, outside of this whole time dilation exposition, was that Luto starts talking about Makoto, and he currently only sees two options, right? As he wants to go home or he has to stay there. Of course, obviously he wants to go home if he can. I mean, assumingly that is his main priority, to go home, if he finds a way. But then he hints at a third option that, hey, maybe he will become so powerful, or he will discover some way to travel between worlds, so he will not just have to choose one or the other, but he can have both. Which then led into an even more interesting thought experiment for me, where he talked in the way that, okay, so, maybe he chooses to go back if he doesn't find this third way, but then if he chooses to go back to the human world, then of course Shen and Mio and everyone would lose him, right? And that is something that obviously they would not want to happen, because they are deeply connected to Makoto now, and they love him, care for him, and want him around. As Shen explains, he is the thing that sort of gives her life meaning, basically, or dazzles her day, if that makes sense. Anyhow, though, what I thought about when he talked about this was, okay, so maybe this can make some sort of conflict happen. Like, what would Shen and Mio especially be willing to do if it looks like Makoto has to choose between going home or staying there, and if he then edges himself towards going home? What would Shen and Mio be willing to do to stop that? Would they be willing to, let's say, use force and fight Makoto to try to get him to stay? Or what else might they come up with if that situation presents itself? I thought that could be a really, really interesting thing and clash of characters and plotlines and stories sometime down the line, if anything like that comes around to happen. I doubt it will, but I think anything like that could be really interesting to explore in the show. But yeah, outside of that, Ludo is definitely a big old perv and tries to seduce Makoto every which way, saying that he or she or it can transform into whatever he fancies, which is, I guess, a nifty skill. I do have to wonder, though, because Luto is a greater dragon, but Shen is also a greater dragon, right? But Luto is, like, one of the more famous ones, and assumingly more powerful, question mark? Didn't quite get exact information on that. Another thing, though, that I found interesting was, again, the whole difference in time and lifespan and stuff like that, because then Luto keeps on explaining and exposition dumping that, hey, humans in his old world, because Jen asks, yes, humans in his old world dies at like 100 at most before then even. And apparently Shen takes that to be somewhat weird, to which I thought to myself, okay, so wait, do humans in this isekai world live longer? Like, is 100 years just really short for humans in this world? Do the humans, as they are called, live way longer, like 200, 300, 500 years? If so, is Makoto now going to live longer because he's in this world? Or because he got his powers? Or because he is basically like a god himself now? Or is he still limited to his normal human lifespan from Earth? Or if he goes back, will he lose the potential long life he has gotten here? Or how will all of that work at all? I have no idea, but I spent like 10 minutes thinking about it for no good reason.
I am crazy. But you know what else? I don't give a fuck.
As I said, though, there was a ton of exposition at the end of episode 9, and I actually quite liked it because it made me think of so many interesting potential plot lines and storylines they could go for and explore more in the season or even next season, which they hopefully get. But hopefully they do get some time to actually explain more of it as well, because some of it was somewhat confusing still. Yes, exactly, quite. I have to say, though, that this Greater Dragon Luto was the one that made the Adventure Guild system like 1,000 years ago, and he made it with a leveling system based on what his master from the real world taught him, using like 16-bit gaming as a base. That might be the most realistic explanation for how an adventurer guild system came to be in an isekai world I've ever heard. Like, wow, that actually makes somewhat sense. Wow, I'm impressed. And at this point, I assume Luto as well, clearly he wants to seduce Makoto, but also have him be his master, because I guess he likes it. Isekai people, or at least interesting, powerful people. Anyhow though, that was the cap of episode 9, and boy, there was a lot to chew on in episode 9. But episode 10 also had its fair share of interesting moments. Now before we get into that, if you are enjoying the video, or in content, my commentary, my analysis, anything, then please remember to like and subscribe to the channel. It greatly helps out, and I greatly appreciate it. So thank you. Now moving on to episode 10. I have a bit of a mixed feel with episode 10, because it felt a bit off. It felt like something was missing, like they jumped right into episode 10, where this organization, that we didn't really do anything with last episode, we just encountered them briefly, kind of, cryptically, but didn't really do anything. But apparently now in episode 10, Rona and the others spent days investigating, they already got all the information, and it's sort of already a done deal. Like, yeah, we did it, we fixed it, we took care of it, and that's it. Like, what? Like, did I miss an episode? Did I miss something here? Is it in episode 9.5 I missed somewhere? It feels like something is missing. And I got that feel a good bit throughout this episode. Not necessarily that I felt the episode was really rushed and that they skipped over a lot, but it just felt like there wasn't a ton of cohesion coming from episode 9 to episode 10. And I did actually, like, 2-3 times go back to the main menu and check again for episodes, being like, did I actually skip an episode? Am I crazy? But no, I was not. At least, not this time. It just all felt a bit weird to me, like, especially the whole organization thing and how they just cleaned that up, and how basically we didn't really get even any more info on it, just that, okay, the organization is still shadowy. We only know that, okay, I guess they hate the goddess, so based, but outside of that, okay, they do experimentation, which we already knew, but we didn't get any other information from that, even though apparently Makoto and his crew knows all about it. They didn't tell us anything about it, which I find a bit sad and weird, but I guess they didn't want to give us the information yet, and want to keep the audience in the dark for some reason, for later, maybe. But yes, that whole thing was a bit odd to me, but also just how Rona seems way more friendly with Makoto in this episode, while last episode felt way more neutral or semi-cold. It just felt like there was a missing link between these two episodes that got lost somewhere. I felt they could have at least spent like 5 minutes at least to cover the organization and unraveling that thing before moving on, instead of doing it very willy-nilly quickly like they did in the first few minutes of this episode. I do feel they could have also spent a tiny bit more time on the students to showing them gradually grow, but that part they did better, at least, and I was happy enough with that. But yes, as I said, I got this weird feeling of the episode itself, but outside of that kink, overall the episode was enjoyable, and I have generally good things to say about it. I do quite like the scheming and thought experiments that this episode also provided, where you have the whole Rona incentivizing Makoto, being like, hey, maybe we can work together sometime. Maybe, if your priorities align with ours, you can help the demon army out sometime if we have something in common. And that whole sort of scheming and more neutral stance that Makoto has, and not being this whole white and black outlook on the world, really opens a lot of interesting possibilities down the line of what might he do with which faction or army or country or interest to further his own interests and ambitions or dreams or goals. Outside of that as well, I did like to see the Rembrandt sisters, again, clearly having turned a new leaf, though still being somewhat scary to people, in this case especially women trying to smooch off of Makoto being his token wife, or wives, and the sisters scaring them off very harshly, which just makes them top tier waifus in my mind. Though I didn't get the feeling that they themselves want to be waifus to Makoto, just that they really have a deep respect for him and only want women that actually care for him to be close to him, and not, random harlots. So based. Very based. Another thing I really did quite like in this episode is that once again, they showcase that Makoto is willing to get his hands dirty, so to speak, same as he did with the blonde in season 1, after the whole debacle with the Minishen and the whole death and sadness there, and how he just ruthlessly, emotionlessly, just went and killed her with the knife in the throat and all that. And same here, assumingly, though we didn't get to see it, assuming he just doing that professor in, and him not seeing the light of day ever again. So again, I do quite like that whole aspect of his character, that he isn't really violent, he isn't really, let's say, sociopathic, or what you want to say, but he's willing to do whatever it takes to protect the ones he cares about, and anyone that wants to hurt the ones he cares about, or also just supposedly do bad things, apprehensible things to people in general, innocent people, he's more than willing to lay down the pain. And he isn't some sort of MC soy boy that is going on a crusade of, no, we can fix them, or no, let's put them in jail. It's like, no, some people don't deserve to live. So once again, base Makoto, I do like that facet of his character very much. As a final point in this video, I do also really very much appreciate the whole academy training arc, as I've mentioned multiple times before. It is just such a breath of fresh air to see Makoto being in the teacher position, not the student position, and actually taking all this care to train and teach and improve his students and how they interact with each other, and having this whole wholesome training arc, but with him being the actual teacher in this case. It is just so unbelievably refreshing, though not, this isn't some complex thing, right? This isn't some, wow, mind-blowing new concept. It's just that, wow, in comparison to 99% of every other academy arc in Isekai, this just feels so much fresher and better. And I really do like that a lot. And I do hope we see a lot more of the students as well as they keep improving. And from the title of the next episode, it sounds like we will. I also have to say though quickly that this one waifu of the students, she is a Shiki addict. God damn, she wants to be his wife and have like 10 of his babies.
Shiki-san, はっきり言って好きだ。理想の男性だ。
Holy. So best Shiki better get those rings ready for that one. I also have to say, poor Shiki, man. Like, he just, in episode 9, really so badly wanted just to smash some skulls and get down to business, but he didn't get the excuse he needed because Lime escaped himself, and he was so mad about it, poor man. But one day, I'm sure, he'll get to actually commit horrible violence on some poor people. Ay. Anyhow though, those are my general thoughts on episode 9 and 10 of Tsukimichi. I do realize this video went a bit long, but hey, there was a lot of things to talk about in this one, okay? What did you think of episode 9 and 10? Do you like it? Hate it? Leave all those comments down below. And of course, if you have thoughts or comments on my commentary, review and analysis, and reaction, leave those down below in the comment section as well. If you want to watch something else, well, you can watch the entire playlist of Season 2 of Tsukimichi if you haven't watched my other episode reviews, or find any other array of videos on my channel that I hope you will enjoy. That being said, I hope you have a good day, hope you keep watching anime, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.